At last, how did I get there? Okay, hello, my name's Ed. I want to talk about New Zealand, its electoral system, MMP, and I want to talk about the threshold issue. New Zealand can be proud of its electoral system, but the threshold has been a problem for 25 years. In this video, I want to say three things. 1, the threshold percentage is not the real problem. 2, there is a very simple solution. 3, it's still MMP, but better. So let me explain. But first, just some reminders. The threshold works by discarding votes for under-threshold parties. There are 2 thresholds at present, the 5% one and the coattails rule. Some say the threshold is needed to limit small parties. Others say the threshold is too high and limits small parties too much. Some say the threshold is not needed and should be abolished. The MMP review 10 years ago recommended a change to a 4% threshold. But actually, a reduced threshold does not solve the problem. Votes will still be wasted. So we need a better solution. And to get this better solution, we need a better understanding of what the threshold really does. We discard under-threshold votes, so creating the wasted votes problem. And wasted votes are a pretty serious problem, and they distort everyone's response to small political parties. Voters don't want to waste their vote. Small parties take votes from their friends and then waste them. How to lose friends fast. Big parties surely fear under-threshold support parties. So few people want to start a new party, cooperate with one, or still more, don't want to vote for one. So it's hardly surprising, really, that almost no new parties have gained seats under MMP in New Zealand. And in every election, 5 to 8% of New Zealanders have their party vote discarded. Why do we do this to them? But when you compare the threshold percentage with all the above, the threshold is just a minor problem. The solution is to put an end to wasted votes. So we need a simple solution that will suit everyone. So just a reminder about those wasted votes. Under-threshold votes are discarded, 5 to 8% of party votes every election. Small parties become spoilers. They take votes from their friends and waste them, so they don't have too many friends. And voters don't want to waste their vote, as we hear so often. This makes a poisonous environment for everyone: voters, small parties, big parties, the left, the centre, the right. But the 2012 MMP review submissions held the seeds of a solution. And to get to the solution, consider these situations for making choices. At the dairy, please get me a pistachio flavour ice cream. If they have no pistachio, get me a vanilla one. They're sure to have that. Or, for a restaurant, I'd prefer a vegan dish if possible. But if that's not possible, fish and chips will suit me just fine. Fish and chips is always available. Well, the common theme here is pretty clear: giving people a second choice. Everybody understands the idea, and probably everyone has used it. So we can apply the simple idea easily to party voting. If my preferred party misses the threshold, give my vote to this bigger party instead. They're sure to pass the threshold, and how I will have a vote that counts. So, to repeat that, if my preferred party misses the threshold, give my vote to this bigger party instead. They're sure to pass the threshold. I will have a vote that counts. Now this idea ticks all the boxes. It's intuitive, no more complicated than choosing your ice cream. It's easy to implement, just one more column on the party voting paper and one optional extra tick. It's easy to count. If the voter's first choice of party fails to pass the threshold, their vote goes to their second choice. And it's still MMP. From here on, everything else remains exactly the same. So here's a little question of spot the difference. The existing voting paper or the one that you would need for a second choice. Not much different between them really. You'll have spotted that for a second choice you need a second column of tick boxes for the party vote, and you need some slightly different instructions, but otherwise it's pretty much the same. And the results are all pretty simple. This is a results table, which might look a little complicated, but it's the same table that you would use for a voting place, for an electorate, for the whole country. It's the same idea, and each of those is separate. And you'll see the example that I've shown here. This party, Big 2, that got 40% of the party vote. We have a column for it here. It got 40% of the party vote, and in this example, 11% of votes were wasted. But if we look at add in the second choices, because we had these three small parties, growing 1, growing 2, and tiny 1, that did not pass the threshold. If we allocate their second choice votes, as I've shown, you will get some new total percentages, but with the wasted vote dropping to 0.7%. And those, of course, are only imaginary numbers. Typically, we get 5 to 8% of votes wasted in a New Zealand election, and I think we get a very high level of understanding that if you want to have a vote that counts, you need to make sure that your second choice is for a party that you think is certain to pass the threshold. So, when you look at this, the problems have gone. No voter needs to waste their vote. 99% or more of voters can vote for a party that wins seats. Like parties are no longer at odds with each other. The obstacles to entry for new parties are much lower. And with all of that, the threshold stays the same, but it's less of a barrier. So there's a few details to explain here. The system will evidently work for any threshold that you choose. The 5%, the present 5% threshold, or you could reduce it to 4, or even, Barrister thought, increase it to 6. It will work just fine with the electorate threshold, or whatever threshold you wish. And actually, it's better than having no threshold at all, because every voter can have a say in the final result. A second point is that the risk of what I call a cliff edge disappears. In the present system, the difference between 4.999% of the vote and 5% is enormous. And cliff edges can create crises where 1 or 2 disputed votes can change the whole overall result. The third point is that the second vote is covering one external contingency, that the voter's first choice party is deemed ineligible for seats, which is something that the voter cannot be sure of in advance. So, how complicated is this? Is this rocket science that's difficult to follow? It certainly isn't. Every New Zealander understands what a second choice is. Here it requires just one more tick, and that's optional. The voting paper is extremely robust against voter error. Vote counting is only a little more detailed than at present, and the method for handling second choices is very, very simple. Now, New Zealand chose proportional representation, and here is real proportional representation with every party vote able to count. Now, a threshold is something that can be very useful, but the problem up to now has been discarding under threshold votes. A second choice of party vote is easy and solves the problems. And here we see that giving that second choice is so very simple. So, to summarise, who would gain from this two-choice system? Well, it seems to me that everybody wins. We still have no tiny parties in Parliament. There are no more wasted votes to complain about. Small parties are no longer spoilers. They can develop in peace and cooperate with their allied parties. The threshold is still there, but the poisonous atmosphere for small parties is gone. The electoral system has extremely high proportionality, and it's still the MMP we know and love.